What is going on, my friends, and welcome back to another video on the channel. In today's video, we're going to cover ApeCoin as its price is up about 50 to 55% in the last 3 days, and many of you have been asking me on DMs and on Telegram and on Twitter, hey, Tyler, should we be buying? In your personal opinion, what are you thinking about it? And so with that said, here we are. I'm just going to kind of answer that question for you and let you know where my mind is at. Now, before we do get into the technicals, a little bit more of the technical side of things, because I do always like to cover the technicals, I do want to go ahead and say that I do believe technical analysis on a crypto of this size is a little bit less efficient. I think, whenever they are this new, considering the fact that it's only been out for about a month now, we do have to consider the fact that things are going to influence it that are going to be far out of the realm of technical analysis. And so for that reason, it is extremely important to focus on the fundamentals a little bit more, which is why we're going to start with why the price has been climbing and then what I think that translates to in terms of the price in the mid and the long term. So of course, what we can see here is that APE price climbs 55% in 3 days as a BAYC, aboard Ape Yacht Club, land drop rumor goes viral. What we can see here is that a rumor circulating across social media platforms since April 18th suggests that the owner of Bored Ape Yacht Club and Mutant Ape Yacht Club NFTs may receive virtual lands on the Yuga Labs much anticipated Otherside metaverse platform. Otherside will be an MMORPG game where players can employ their NFTs as native avatars or characters. A leaker investor pitch deck shows that Yuga Labs expects to earn $178 million by selling virtual lands, with Ape acting as the de facto token to process these purchases. Some BAYC NFT owners claim that Yuga Labs would sell the Otherside virtual lands via a Dutch auction. In doing so, the firm could set the minimum bid at 608, about $10.7 thousand at today's price. So of course, what that basically is going to mean is that it is going to start to confirm some of the things in which people have been a little bit, a little bit interested in recently, and saying that, okay, of course we get the idea behind ApeCoin and we understand that it is in some way a way for people to be able to invest into the idea of the BAYC and to be able to kind of get involved in it, but in a much smaller way, not necessarily purchasing multi-$1,000 NFTs. And of course, if you do support it or anything of that nature, there are many aspects in terms of, kind of a more of a psychological reason as to why you would support ApeCoin. But a lot of people and a lot of the doubters and a lot of the, I wouldn't necessarily haters, but people who are just kind of a little bit cautious about it have always said, well, what's the true utility going to be here, right? I mean, what can we do with this? And I know, of course, we did get information that this was possible, but it is starting to become a bit of a factor in the price, in my opinion. I think that once we started to see the price kind of falling, then that's when a lot of the doubts started. And then it started to come around to the idea of, okay, well, realistically, what is this even going to be used for? So considering the fact that some type of utility may be being added to ApeCoin itself, going forward, it may set some precedent of to what we could see it being used for. And that does introduce the idea of introducing volume to ApeCoin and introducing some more liquidity and introducing overall utility, which of course is always beneficial to the long term of a crypto. I mean, you have to have utility, and you have to have something to induce volume for you to be successful. There's no other way. So of course, with that is good news, and that has started to send the price towards the top side here. But now it comes into the thought process of, well, should we be buying? Like, that's always the hard part. It's like, well, we saw this huge run to the top side. We saw a massive liquidation in which many VCs, many early investors, many people capable of getting in on the private sale, and many people who are airdropped ApeCoin simply for having the NFTs themselves, we saw them all liquidate. Right? We saw huge liquidation in which the price at this point did a pullback of about 80% on launch day. Now, with that said, that does have some factors that we're going to cover in a second. But with that said, a lot of people are kind of asking the question like, well, what happens here, right? I mean, can we get back up to that point, or is that kind of the peak? Are we going to keep getting liquidated before then? I mean, what exactly is going to happen? And that's where I'm going to try to offer my opinion. So as somebody who's kind of been around the block when it comes to newer cryptos that are, relatively new within a couple months, or, micro caps in general. This one is not a micro cap. It's like $4 billion, but it is new in the sense of time. And so with that said, as someone who's seen this over and over and over again, of course, my channel was developed on micro caps and new cryptos until we eventually did kind of make a shift. I will go ahead and say that purchasing and aping into ApeCoin right now is a pretty extreme risk. Now, the reason I'm going to say that is because there are two reasons as to why the price very possibly could see a strong liquidation from this point forward. Now, mind you, I love BAYC. I know people who've made loads of money off of it. I personally didn't. I was not a part of the Bored Ape Yacht Club NFT sales earlier in the year of last year and everything. I missed it. It is what it is, but I know a lot of people who were, and I'm so happy for them. But realistically, even though I do support ApeCoin and just the whole idea itself, especially as it brings excitement to the crypto world right now, I gotta issue warnings. Okay, so the first warning is just what what we are seeing. This price growth has been the result of what is considered to be a rumor. Now, everyone on earth who is in crypto at this point has heard the good old saying, buy the rumor, sell the news, buy the rumor, sell the news, buy the rumor, sell the news, in which the rumor is what induces growth. People start to say, oh, this would be great, this would be great, this would be great. Then as soon as it's introduced to the ecosystem, then it's just not great, right? We start to see the price falling as that excitement starts to dwindle. We've seen it over and over and over again, right? I mean, we look at something like, for example, I would say one of the biggest ones is ADA Cardano. You start to look back to see when smart contracts launched. This was the peak. This is when smart contracts started to launch. We started to see all of these upgrades happening, and everyone was super excited leading up to it. And the next thing you know, it just crashes for months and months and months because the buy the rumor, sell the news event. And so considering the fact that that is still on the table here, and that is something that needs to be considered, is the fact that as soon as the news does itself drop or the event itself does happen, there very possibly could be a strong sell-off. Now, not only that though, what if the rumor is proven to be false? That is another thing you have to consider, in the sense that, well, realistically, if the rumor is false, that's not going to be good. A lot of this growth in which we have seen is likely going to be liquidated. In my opinion, I think that it does seem to be pretty factual. I did check out the leaked investor pitch deck, and it does seem to be something that would make sense for BAYC in general to implement. I mean, I think it would make a pretty significant amount of sense to use ApeCoin to be the de facto token to process these payments. It makes a lot of sense, but at the end of the day, we need to see that happen. So aping in on a rumor that is not confirmed yet, risky. Now, not only that though, you have to consider the I don't want to say newness. I don't feel like that's the right word, but the level of the amount of time in which ApeCoin has been around, it's just not old, right? And so for that reason, whenever cryptos first launch, whenever they are first starting to hit the market, especially when they have loads of VCs, they did loads of airdrops, and they had many private sales, something you have to consider is the fact that those people who got in early, who made millions of dollars here, are still in. Right? Most people who got in and say they got in at just public launch price, IDO price, right? They got in at $4 or so right here. Realistically, whenever this thing hit $4 or $48, $45, they were up 10x. Now, realistically, I'm sure that there were some buy-ins even lower than that. And there were people like the guy that we saw that made over $75,000 on the launch just from getting airdrop tokens. Many of those people did not sell their total positions. And so for that reason, as they do start to see growth towards these higher levels, there is a strong chance that they do continue to liquidate, right? You have to understand, they saw it go all the way up to 40. Right? At some point, someone who put in $10,000 and for some reason, say, for example, was able to get in at just about $4 or $5, and, maybe due to a private sale, being a venture capital, whatever, those same people at some point saw their position up 10x. So say if they put in 100,000, they saw it at $1 million. And as it starts to fall and it starts to get cut down, right? And they're looking at maybe much lower than that, right? I mean, only looking at maybe $300,000 in comparison to $1 million. Then they start to get in a position in which, as they do start to get back towards these levels, taking profits is going to happen because it is so new, especially if there are vesting schedules that people may not be aware of, which there very possibly could be. You also have to consider the fact that those are going to unlock, especially as we are passing up a month. And the next thing you know, we do start to see liquidations. So considering the fact that liquidation is still at risk right now, and not just small liquidation, strong liquidation, especially considering what we saw back here as it just massively continued to the downside, you always have to consider that that is a risk. Now, am I saying that is going to happen? No. Am I saying that it is going to just come up here and then get liquidated straight back down to, this $8 level in which it had before? No. A lot of people probably did sell pretty, relatively large positions. But considering the amount of people who got some for free, just people who are already holding the NFTs and were airdropped it, and mixing with people who are able to get in on this thing before it launched, you have to be aware of the fact that taking profits will happen. And when you mix that in with the fact that this growth that we are seeing right now is solely based off of a rumor, you got to be careful. That is, to me, that's a mixture of like, okay, that's a little bit risky. But now let's talk about some good stuff. I kind of feel like I've been kind of hammering in the bearish points. Let's talk about some good stuff. So obviously we can't really look at anything in terms of, I don't really want to pull up the Bollinger Bands. I don't really want to pull up RSI or MACD. It's just a month old, so those aren't going to be as effective. I feel like there's not enough historical data there. But looking at this thing from more of a fundamental based perspective in a form of technical analysis, you could say that progress is being made. And that is always important, right? So as the price did collapse and as people did liquidate, what we can see is that the price did put in these lows towards this $11 point, and since then has not done so again, right? As we do start to see growth, people start to take profits and we start to see it kind of dwindle and die off, but support is established and we do continuously see these higher lows put in. So as these higher lows are put in, that says that there is still bullishness and that there is still excitement behind the idea and the overall functionality of ApeCoin itself. And that when we see news like this come out that may introduce even more utility to it as a crypto token itself, there definitely could be a justifiable growth in the price as that utility does increase its overall inherent value. So for that reason, it is good to see that the price does continue to set these higher lows. Not only that though, as we did see the first bounce off of this low right here, this is always, in my opinion, the most important bounce. The reason being, all of the people who saw the price just absolutely crash to the downside, especially those who are in early venture capitalists, etc. This first bounce right here is usually going to be an indicator of where you're going to start to see a ceiling set. You're going to see a ceiling set there because realistically, they know once we get to this point, we need to liquidate a little bit, because last time we didn't liquidate, we saw our position fall again another 30 to 40%, and they don't want to go through that. And so for that reason, we need to be very aware and very cautious of the fact that at this point, though we have, kind of run into resistance here, we need to be aware of the fact that we have somewhat put in a higher high. We did see the price being able to break out through that ceiling and continue to set what is now an ascending level of resistance, which says that the bears are not necessarily having as much success to the top side and that liquidations aren't happening as fast as they had back here right after this pullback. So for that reason, there is bullishness there in the sense that we are starting to see the price continuously setting higher lows and higher highs, which is the definition of an uptrend. But mixed in the idea that, we are going to see liquidations throughout this entire range here, mixed in with the fact that this is based off of a rumor, I definitely would tread with caution. So my opinion, to summarize this video and wrap it up, is to say, realistically, I'm under the belief that if you are going to be purchasing this thing, primarily, I would be going in a very slow and steady fashion. I would not be aping in. I would not be looking for a breakout. I've been seeing all of the articles where it says ApeCoin eyes 250% rally amid bull pennant breakout, in which people are starting to look at this breakout. They look at it from this perspective. Let me get this pulled up. They look at it like this. They say this is a bull pennant. And if you do go ahead and you take basically this to this, you apply that here, then you can go ahead and say that your breakout growth is going to be about 200, and from my charts, it's about 290%. Some people are going to say that. I would go ahead and I would be very cautious, right? I would go ahead and say that just because we are seeing breakouts and just because we are seeing growth, that does not mean that there are extremely fundamentally strong growths that are happening right now that aren't fragile, because in my opinion, this is a very fragile move. If that rumor just comes out to be not true, do understand this is going to come back down. So my opinion, and what I likely would do in this situation, is to take it extremely slow. Maybe look for this resistance, the key level of resistance to get broken, do a little bit of accumulating. And as the good news does continue, maybe as the rumor does seem more and more true, accumulate and accumulate. Then once you start to get to a point in which you are starting to see good gains, be taking profits. If you're buying down here, or if you're accumulated all the way down here, be looking to take profits, because you best believe the whales are once we hit this zone up here. Okay. So for that reason, I would go ahead and say slow accumulation is the only accumulation that I personally would be doing in this situation. And I would not even consider just totally aping in. Now, could the price just absolutely shoot up and go to $77? And next thing you know, I look like the biggest moron on earth? Sure. But is my reasoning here justified to the point that I wouldn't care? Absolutely. And I think that this is very fragile, and you just need to be careful until it strengthens up. This growth that we're seeing right now could strengthen. The fundamentals behind the growth could strengthen. We could see confirmed rumors, and we could start to see the liquidations not happening as bad as we would anticipate. And then that growth does become stronger. But until then, I would definitely be playing it safe, and I would definitely be playing it cool. But I do think that there is potential, and I definitely think that gains can be made as utility is introduced to ApeCoin's overall price. So with that being said, that is going to be about it for today's video. I hope I didn't piss anyone off too bad, and I hope I didn't overexcite anyone too much. I do like to stay in the middle and just let you guys know my honest, neutral opinion, and that is exactly what it is. So with that said, that is going to be about it. I hope you guys did enjoy, and I will see you all next time. Peace.